Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. And before I start, I would like to remind you, as always, to join my mailing list, follow me on Instagram, check out my website with my books for children and my novel as well. I have Patreon account, PayPal account, and that's about it. I would like to welcome for the first time a guest I was looking forward to connect with, and this gentleman is actually very renowned and fascinating astrologer. This is Bryan Colter, and I would like to tell you something about Bryan because I went on his website too, and I really love what is on his website. This statement: we incarnate here on Earth to learn, mature, and evolve. Evolutionary astrology is a tool that can help us to accelerate the process. And that's why I wanted to bring Bryan on my channel and talk about many things. Welcome, Bryan.
Hello. Thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here, Anya.
Thank you so much. So I would like to say that I was thinking what questions I can ask you because my audience is sometimes confused about my channel because I have quite eclectic channel, which is talking about current events with certain people, more from like political, analytical standpoint. Then I have spiritual guests as well.
And
And
then the
what I
weirdo
am
astrologer.
no, but I believe, Bryan, that we have to look at certain events from different angles and have a full spectrum as much as we can, wide spectrum of observing what's happening, what the heck is happening in these current times we are living in. So I would like to ask you my first question. This is quite interesting maybe for you to be asked like this, but do you think in current days, like it used to be before with kings and queens, that the leaders actually secretly somewhere are consulting their moves with astrologers?
I'm sure it happens. Yeah, somewhere. There's a famous quote. I'm trying to pull it. It's like from one of those famous rich people, like the Rockefellers or something like that, where they said that millionaires don't use astrologers, but billionaires do. Something like that, you know. And there have been key political figures that have used astrologers. I think the Reagans did, perhaps in the 80s. But I think most of them do it more secretly because they don't want to be seen as the crazy person who consults the astrologer. So it's kind of, I suspect, yes, but I mean, it's hard to know definitively.
Wow, this is so good that you mentioned Reagan because I think I overheard somewhere about it too. And you're right. So
Yeah.
in secret, they might do. So let me ask you this. If you would look at the cycle we are in right now, the planetary changes and how this is all how the sky looks now at this point, if you would compare it, Bryan, to any cycle in the history, what cycles we are like experiencing the most similar ones in the history, could you say?
My focus on astrology is more about the spiritual evolution of the individual. Certainly on my YouTube channel, I do focus on the collective. But in terms of being a historical astrologer, that is definitely not my strong suit. I guess just off the cuff, I mean, we're at this very pivotal time as we enter into this new epoch, basically, 2100 year cycle, age of Aquarius. This is a major shift. So if we look at it like super big picture, you know, we haven't had something this dramatic since we changed into the age of Pisces. So we have all these cycles, that's the biggest cycle, but then we have all these wheels within wheels within wheels turning, click click click, and sometimes they all kind of click together, and we have three big wheels that are clicking over the coming years. So really what we're experiencing today is going to be much different than where we'll be in mid 2026, for example, because by then Uranus will have entered Gemini, Neptune will have left Pisces, its own sign, entered Aries, and then Pluto will be in Aquarius. And by that point, I think we'll be officially into the age of Aquarius, which is pretty exciting.
So now you got me really curious. Those 3 cycles, what are
Yeah.
they?
Well, do you have 3 hours? I think where I want to enter into this, I guess just work with one of them to start, would be Pluto. Pluto's archetypally known as the god of hell. It's the planet of extremes. And whenever it's in a sign, it's been in Capricorn since 2008, there tends to be extreme manifestations on either end, the positive and the negative, between that polarity of that sign that it's rolling through. And 2008, wow, that was a grand entrance, right? As it entered Capricorn, which does have a strong connection to business and money, etc. And that's when we had the economic downturn. But now it's in about, I think, 28 degrees of Capricorn, and there's 30 degrees in each sign, so it'll be entering Aquarius. It'll be dipping its toes in Aquarius March of 2023, and it'll spend a few months in Aquarius, and then it'll retrograde and then go backwards through Aquarius and re-enter Capricorn. And then in January 2024, it'll officially enter Aquarius, where it will stay until 2043. So here you have a very long cycle right away with Pluto, where the extremes coming to the forefront with Capricorn. And, when a planet's in its last couple degrees of a sign, it's kind of like the metaphor I like to use is the students in college the week before final exams. It's crunch time. It's like we're trying to really wring out as much evolutionary potential from Capricorn as we can, yet it's very extreme. And this has been amplified over the last couple of years because we had the Pluto-Saturn conjunction in 2020. Saturn rules Capricorn. So you had Saturn in its own sign in a conjunction with Pluto. We know what happened 2020. That was the start of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And then Pluto's been in this ongoing square with the asteroid Aries, which really brings to the forefront extreme versions of the dark side of competition, but also the extreme versions of the more evolved expression of competition towards innovation and such like this. So it's been pretty tough because, Capricorn deals with ambition, it deals with money, it deals with the patriarchy. So we're looking at the extreme version of the patriarchy, which is trying to evolve to a whole new level. But it's been kind of busting at the seams because it's been so extreme, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So starting about 2020, when Saturn hit Pluto, it's just like we went into a whole nother degree of dark side Capricorn, which is control. Tightening the grips of control. And we've been feeling the squeeze, But through that, we've gained great maturity and wisdom. I'm generalizing amongst the collective here. That's the good news with Capricorn. We've seen strong levels of integrity and a massive maturational growth spurt. That's really when we talk about my style of astrology, which is known as evolutionary astrology. It's like we look at the symbols, honor the light side of the force, if you will, the dark side of the force. Like, what's the higher octave expression? Where can we suck with it, basically? And the more we strive for that higher octave expression, the faster we grow. And that's really the philosophy at the core to my approach, as I think we're souls incarnate in a human body, and ultimately we're here to learn. And I use the archetypes as methods of growth. It's like energetic influences. We're influenced, but within those influences, free will reigns supreme. And based on our own decisions and intentions, we either accelerate our growth or we slow it, But then some of the challenges of Capricorn have been loneliness,
Yes.
depression, isolation, kind of the grind. Things tend to slow down during heavy Saturn and Capricorn years, brought into extremes with Pluto as it's trying to wrap up Capricorn. So we've been going through major growing pains through this pressure cooker energy as we prepare to enter into, again, the age of Aquarius. Now, in actuality, I think we've started to enter the age of Aquarius really in the early 1900s. It's like it's not like it starts on Tuesday at 11:43 a.m. It's like, especially with these 2100-year cycles, there's we hit a wave into it, and then at some point, the rest of the archetypes reach this critical mass where we can say, okay, we're officially in it. But if we just observe reality, in the early 1900s, we took the first flight, so Wright brothers. And then we landed on the moon, supposedly. I won't get into that.
Right. Now I'm gonna have like all the comments. I'm like, relax, everyone, take a deep breath. Yeah, like that was another another show. Yes, but can I jump in quickly here, because you mentioned
I ramble, so go ahead, please.
No, it's great, but I pick up certain, like, by the way, my astrological sign is Capricorn, so I'm like, are you describing me? It's like, Bryan, okay, I've heard from several other astrologers, and it's amazing. Like, you just reminded me, because I forgot to ask you about it actually. March 2023. This is like a pivotal moment. What this March 2023 really represents? What to expect? Why is it so significant, the date? And then you said in January 24. Was it correct?
Yep.
So what those dates are about?
Well, the reason why March 2023 is important is because we're going through a major archetypal shift and an energetic shift, if you will. It'll be palpable for those, especially those who are sensitive to energies. And the reason for that is twofold. Mainly, as I said before, Pluto's going to be dipping its toes in Aquarius, for the first time, which again, it'll be until June. So that's one big reason. The second reason is Saturn will be leaving Aquarius and entering Pisces, same month. So here you have these two slow movers changing signs in the same month. And whenever that happens, there's a major change, in terms of like, what are our evolutionary intentions, not only as a collective, but individually as well. So on an individual level, for folks that have a lot of planets in Aquarius, for example, and Pisces, both these planets will eventually, depending on what degree, in your own birth chart, these planets, especially in the early degrees of these signs, they too will be feeling it in a big way. And what I really want to focus on here, though, is Pluto and Aquarius, because that's really the headliner. And as I said, Pluto brings out the extremes of the sign it's in. So we're entering the age of Aquarius with a bang, Pluto entering its own sign. And what we're going to see in the last half of this decade is going to be pretty wild, in my opinion. I mean, I don't consider myself much of a fortune teller or trying to predict the future, because we can't possibly predict a probabilistic future. It is fun to think about, make educated guesses and surmise, but we can't really know. But what I think is going to happen is a rapid acceleration in technology coming out. Like it has been. It's been blinding, but we crank that knob even more, because Aquarius deals with evolution, technology, things like freedom, autonomy, independence. And that's one way, if you wanted to give the age of Aquarius kind of a title, it would be the age of information. That's one way of putting it. And information continues to accelerate. I mean, I was using a 2400 baud modem in 96 or 98. Now I'm on a fiber connection. Not too long in the future, we'll probably be linked up to satellites for the internet. So it's just going to continue to compound and go faster and faster and faster, especially as Uranus enters Gemini in 2026. It's going to continue to ramp up. Now, there's a dark side of that, of course, but there's also a beautiful side to that. And I think I said this in one of my videos a long time ago. I think it was the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction that was the end of 2020. It's like, because I do like to paint in extremes, because it gives us a sense of where we're headed. So the extreme shadow side of that Aquarian age would be this corporatocracy, AI controlled slave species. You know, I mean, that's the extreme dark. I don't think that'll happen. There'll be shades of it, you know. But then we look at the more beautiful aspect of that, where we can use technology to explore, because we are explorers, you know. And I do think, at least I hope, we'll be in space, traveling space in my lifetime, you know, maybe even this decade. You know, it's like, okay, so we're going to manifest the more Star Trek version of our future, you know, or the more Terminator version of our future. You know, that's the stark contrast between extreme
Interesting.
dark and light. Of course, it'll be somewhere in between. And, you know, Pluto, ultimately, from the evolutionary perspective, is about our own woundedness. Pluto is always about a wound and healing from our wounds. So can we heal from wounds of control, you know, over our long history, and embrace those freedom words? It's the rebel archetype, you know. So the rebel, the truth sayer,
Can I
the
say here
outsider, the
something?
exile. Sure.
Brian, what about a wounded soldier? Just
Wounded
came to
soldier.
me. Yes, because
Well,
those events right now, where is this going with the war? Like, as far as future, is this? I think humanity, don't you think we are ready to finally stop those wars?
that's my hope. Yeah, I'm not a fan of wars. It's very low consciousness behavior, very destructive, so much suffering. And that is that dark side of competition, the Pluto Eris square. Meanwhile, another event I didn't even mention, which has been a major feature of 2021 and even this year, is the Uranus Saturn square that's still ongoing. It's not as strong as it was last year, but it's still going, which is that friction of Saturnian Uranian stuff, which is basically control and rules and regulations and top-down order. And then Uranus, which rules Aquarius, is very similar to the field of Aquarius, which is that freedom-seeking impulse. You know, so we have the Saturn, which the dark side of Saturn wants to control. Uranus hates that. It wants to break free from the chains of bondage. So the friction between these two planets over last year and this year is super strong. You know, so there's a lot of tension.
How is it forward? Which one takes over?
Which one wins? Well, hopefully you find a nice integration and balance between the two. You know, if Uranus completely overtakes Saturn and dominates Saturn, you have full rebellion and anarchy, which can be very destructive too. You know, where, you know, it's like, oh, we gotta burn down. It reminds me of you ever see the movie V for Vendetta?
Yes.
You know, let's blow up the capital and start all over again. You know, that's like the Uranian impulse, which is completely gone to levels of extreme. Whereas Saturn going to extreme is totally about governmental takeover. You know, it's kind of like a martial law sort of situation. So hopefully we find a happy integration between the two, where we still honor the beautiful wisdom, some of the beautiful wisdom, which is a part of the more positive quality of Saturn, the beautiful wisdom of the past, because ultimately Saturn is about our own habits, you know, ingrained behavior. So honoring some of those beautiful wisdom-based habits, but breaking free from some of the laws and rules and regulations that are holding us back, you know, as well as the dark side of the patriarchy.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, while also entering into this Star Trek civilization, so to speak. So we have more freedom, humanitarian focused living, but we don't completely blow up the capital. Does that make sense? So you always want to find
It
an
does.
integration between them. Yeah.
It does make sense because it's like there is a structure and certain order that is not Orwellian, but it's almost like you have a shape. It's like you have a shape, but it's not suppressing. It's rather, it gives a sense of structure. That's how I see it. Bryan, you mentioned 2008. And I want to look from like the monetary financial standpoint now. In this process of changes that are taking place right now, when you look forward, how do you see this monetary aspect, financial aspect is changing?
Well, Pluto will enter Aquarius, and we have that same framework, technology being a big part of it. And that trickles out into pretty much all areas of life, including money. Now, to be fair, money is not my area of focus or expertise. I know enough about astrology with money to get me into trouble. I know enough to get me into trouble, but like it's not my focus. Another big cycle here, which will tie into this Pluto entering Aquarius, is again the planet that rules Aquarius, which is Uranus. It entered into Taurus back in 2018. And it will then leave Taurus and enter Gemini, that where I highlighted before, rapid acceleration, because Gemini also likes to speed things up. It'll enter into Gemini in May of 2026. Now, something about Uranus is it represents evolution. We're trying to bump up to a whole new level, whatever we're trying to evolve from or into. But on the road to doing that, there's another quality about Uranus which can feel pretty destabilizing. It can feel pretty bouncy, pretty rocky, unstable. And it entered the sign of money, Taurus, 2018. So here we are trying to evolve technologically around money and currency, but it's shaky, it's bumpy. So through the great innovation, as on the road to innovating, there's going to be some moments where it's going to be rough. Much like I mentioned the Wright brothers' first flight. It's like how many crashes did they have before they got that thing into the air? It's like there's instability there because we're in the process of learning. So right around when Uranus entered Taurus around 2018, for example, crypto started to really take off, go up, down, up, down, up, down. So this idea of innovation around the money system. And even crypto itself has, I'm a little bit into it. I'm not like super into it, but I have seen a lot of podcasts and stuff about it just out of curiosity. And people who are really into crypto, they see it as like the savior of humanity. Because it's utterly decentralized. By the way, that's another way of looking at the Saturn-Uranus square we're working with right now, is Saturn's more about centralization, Uranus is more about decentralization. So you have this tension so strong. They think, these folks that are into crypto think crypto is going to save humanity because it will help us feel free, from the fiat currency system, which needs to evolve, in my opinion. Now, will it evolve in a good way or a bad way? That's always the question.
Yes, because that's also manipulated, and the whole process of creating crypto, as I went into history, is not necessarily that, bushy tail and bright eyes.
Yeah, look, we are in the realm of duality, up, down, left, right, good, bad, it's like, again, we circle right back to that fundamental concept, which is free will, and karma, basically. So we have a right to choose, whether we're going to use these things for good and freedom, or for bad and control and fear consciousness. So is it love or fear or hate? We're all calibrating individually and as a collective at a certain level of consciousness, and we're always bouncing around the scale. So there's a more virtuous way to have a money system, and there's a less virtuous way. And even within the digital currencies, the governments are trying to create government-controlled digital currencies, which would be the more controlling aspect of that. And crypto, of course, can be used in nefarious ways, but it has an open ledger. There's full transparency, and it's completely decentralized. I think it was, I forget who said it. Maybe it was like Barack Obama or something like that. He's like, for Bitcoin, it's like everybody has their own individual Swiss bank. That's what it's like, so, which can get us into trouble, of course. But to me, it's just utterly Uranus and Taurus. So money is definitely, for better or for worse, going to evolve in this way. So the more we come as a collective from a higher level of consciousness, the more likely we are to co-create the more positive timeline and way to work with these things. Does that make sense?
It does. It's interesting you mentioned Obama, who is someone who I am very sensitive to that person because now when you said he said it, I'm like, okay, now this shines the light on something like, okay, which I don't look at him in a positive way at all. And I'm just honest about it. So
Yeah.
what I would like to ask you is, as we are heading towards this year of 2026 that you mentioned in the very beginning of our chat, is this what is ultimately that deadline? It's an end of a cycle, right? And then how do you see this what are we meeting that year? And I know that can be different, and this is not like fortune telling, but what is the most likely for us to experience in that time, or who we became, let's say, who we became by then?
Well, it's going to ramp up, So you have Pluto entering Aquarius 2023, but then really fully coming into early 2024. That's going to have a massive shift towards that quickening, we could call it, because Pluto enters Aquarius, which is an air sign. Air signs are on the mental plane, so they do represent quickness and intelligence. And then it'll ramp up even more when Neptune enters Aries 2025. And Aries is a fire sign. It's active, it's engaged, it's assertive. And then it'll ramp up a third time when Uranus finally enters Gemini in 2026. So it's like step, step, step. In each step, we go quicker and quicker and quicker. So it's just the level of technological development is going to be blinding, and what do we create? It's totally up to us, whether it's the more heading more towards the more Star Trek civilization, or the AI slave species, or somewhere in between, So I already said that before. I'm not sure. Did you have a different slant on that question, or did I misunderstand it?
From let's say, besides the technological aspect of it, and almost like a quantum leap in that regard, how as individuals, the energy, how we are, what is the life for, like, from the spiritual standpoint, from the energetical standpoint?
Well, hopefully we can use those technologies for good and for our spiritual evolution. For example, even now, I don't know, you've seen my videos. Yeah, sometimes I do guided meditations on there.
Yes, you do.
And I use a technology called binaural beats. A lot of people know what that is. But basically you wear headphones and, and it plays a slightly different tone in each ear, and that balances out both hemispheres of the brain so you can sink into a meditative state much quicker. I call it training wheels for the novice meditator,
But you have a great voice for meditation too, Bryan. Just to let everyone know. Yeah, your voice really takes you there. It's good.
It's good to hear. Yeah. Next time I'll use a Chickmunk voice modifier. So that's an example of me using technology for spiritual purposes. So we look into the future. It's like, what are we going to create? I don't know. I think it's going to be pretty amazing. There's also going to be some concerning things too, like, I don't know, putting brains in your, or chips in your brain, for example. You know, that sounds a little freaky to me. But we're going to be coming out with all kinds of new things, and we're going to be able to use those for our own health and benefit. And I think spiritual health is a big piece of it. So me personally, I am a prisoner of hope and optimism. You know, I'm a Sagittarius, so I tend to be a kind of a glasses half full kind of guy. I do point to the dark, but then I suggest how we can work with these archetypes to strive for the high end, of course, and stay focused there, because I want to help to co-create that future outcome, the more positive one. But me personally, I'm going to be on the lookout for, how I can deepen my spiritual practice, help with my emotional and physical well-being and health.
Yeah.
That's going to be my primary focus.
Yes. And I'm so looking forward to it, because it seems to me like certain people I talk to, they actually have the same vision of the future, like you just said. High technology, pretty much as I feel, assume, believe, from different civilizations, or that we actually had already on Earth, and it has been hidden, suppressed from majority of people on Earth. So it's not like it's that new, it's just it hasn't been really public, let's say. But let me ask you now, for those who are watching, how would you, if they want to contact you and work with you individually, what would you say about that type of work? What kind of work is that? And if someone is interested, what is the best way to reach out to you, and what to expect from those sessions?
Well, through my website, bryancolter.com, I have a few different sections of it. I have my astrology readings. So if you want to work with me on a very personal level, just one-on-one, going through your birth chart, I can pinpoint core pathways of evolution, core soul contracts for you in this lifetime. Energy that as a soul you elected to play with in this lifetime, in this co-creative process with the divine. And there's that. Also, I have a school of astrology on the website. I also have a school of consciousness to work with people on one-on-one, coaching them on different meditation techniques, and teach them my approach to mysticism and spiritual development. And then I have a growing Patreon community. I opened it 2 months ago. We're having a lot of fun. I do 4 live events per month. And I talk about, I do guided meditations on there, more in-depth horoscopes, and also teach astrology there as well. So those are the main ways.
Wonderful. I'm going to attach all the links down below. So if anyone is interested to work with Bryan, to contact Bryan, and please subscribe to his channel as well. Because actually, I have to tell you, I didn't tell you this before we start recording. There is something about your voice when you put out the video that is very calming, but it's not making the listener asleep, because sometimes when you relax, you can drift away. But I actually stay focused, but I'm relaxed when I'm listening to your videos, and I like this. I think we are picking up the own frequency now so much of everything.
Yes.
It is very important to have this message delivered in such a way that you are hearing it, processing it, and you're not tense about it.
Even if I'm talking about AI slave species?
Well, I think no, I think that I am really like I hear it, but I
Yeah.
choose to refocus on
Yeah.
different future.
Well, it's good if you can stay calm while hearing that. But yeah, I do like to focus on the positive. But thank you so much for saying that. That means a lot to me.
Thank you, Bryan. And before we end, is there any final message you would like my audience to hear? Anything that comes to you before we end this conversation today?
One of my favorite questions to ask myself as a little check-in is, what am I calibrating at now? Which is kind of a technical question, but as I indicated before, I think we're always operating at a certain level of consciousness. Every thought, every action, every emotion and intention calibrates at a certain level, either high or low. Another way you could ask it is, what's my frequency right now? And then I use it as a pivot question. So if I feel like I'm a little off or funky or in a dark place, I say, what am I calibrating at now? Because it helps to wrap my mind around in the present moment, like where I'm at, and then make actions and more positive intentions to flip that around so I can then increase my frequency. It's all about frequency. So that's something that's been on my mind a lot, and I felt like sharing it here. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's the self-awareness. Wonderful.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bryan, for coming on. Very, very interesting conversation. I will listen to it definitely a few times again to process it. And thank you everyone for watching. You'll find all the links to Bryan down below, to his channel, Instagram, website, Patreon account. Well, did I miss anything else? Twitter? No.
No Twitter. No. Yeah, I'm on
Twitter.
Instagram and Facebook. But yeah, the YouTube is the main one. Yeah.
And the Patreon and the website. Thank you so much. And lots of love, everyone. Until next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.